Hello and welcome to Lady Dynamite Creates. This is Tiffany and today I'm going to be showing you the process on my Selkie doll. I'm going to be honest with you, this was the very first face-up video I ever recorded, so my camera work's a little bit off. I quite frequently pop my head into frame, so please forgive me. This is also before I got my better lighting set up, so there are some fluctuations in lighting in the video. I really debated on whether showing this or not, but I was happy with how the doll turned out. I first started this doll back in August, and she got shelved for a long time because I was trying to do a 3D model for a ball jointed tail. And unfortunately, that's still on the back burner, but I decided I did want to go ahead and get this doll finished, and so I picked it up and just decided to do a different type of tail. My concept evolved from her being a river fish to her being a Selkie. I always really liked the ideas of Selkies, but I didn't like the fact that in most depictions they are shown just shedding their skin to become human. I really liked the idea of maybe she was half Selkie, half mermaid, so that she had a seal-like tail. My base doll for this is a Claudine wolf, and when I got her she had already had her makeup and hair removed, but she was also missing her legs, and that's what made her the perfect candidate for this mermaid doll. So as you can see here, I've already got her hair rooted, and I have jumped right in on the face-up. The first thing I did was get her eyes shaped down, and then I based in the pupil on her eye. I had a lot of trouble getting that light gray-blue to show up, so I did pull the pigment directly off the pencil. Then with my stubby brush, I go ahead and start doing some shading around the nose and in the eye socket and any of the tighter little areas that are harder to get to. I focus my shading on the mermaid's eyebrows to be pulled inward to give it a sad, mournful look. This is the type of look I like for mermaids. I feel like they would live a very solitary, lonely existence. And now I'm blushing in some color onto her lips. I really like using these Claudine dolls because the darker skin allows you to use some very vibrant colors just to get that pop. And I go ahead and apply the same color on her cheeks and her forehead and nose and chin. Now I'm going to be highlighting some areas with some lighter color and I blend that out. And using my white pastel pencil, I highlight around her eyes. Now using a little bit of burnt umber, I am darkening the eyeshadow around her eyes, really deepening the outer edge, giving her a very smoky look. And then using a red watercolor pencil, I am adding some details to the waterline and to the tear ducts. And here I start making some passes at the eyes, and I start out by darkening the outer outline of the iris, and then I fill in the whites of the eyes and deepen the eyeliner. Then I shade in the top of the iris with a darker color and blend that out, and then I start adding some of my little striations with that dark color. Then with a little bit of dark pastel, I start shaping out her eyebrows, remembering that I want them to be turned up in the center, giving her that furrowed brow of a sad look. Then I refine the shape with an eraser and then add hair details with a watercolor pencil. And then I start adding in her pupil, and on this one I did it a little bit differently than I normally do. This one is kind of like a C-shaped pupil, and I felt like, you know, she's a mermaid, you can get away with having it look a little bit different and just be kind of unique. And then with a very sharp pencil I go in and add her top and bottom lashes. And for some added interest into the iris, I add in some white striations. Finally, I sketch out her face markings and get those painted in with gouache and add in her catch lights and the highlights to her waterline. And with that, her face-up's done. Now onto her tail. The first thing I do is sketch out a general shape that I wanted onto some EVA foam, and I cut 4 of these with the 2 middle pieces, keeping in mind the shape of her pelvis. On one of my middle pieces, I cut in a V-groove and then I pull that foam out. This is going to allow a place for my wire to rest. This wire is going to allow for some posability. Now I run a length of wire up through her pelvis and I twist those ends together and I clip it off at the length that I want. In the end, I should have used a thicker gauge of wire because the foam thickness didn't allow for much of the pose to be held with that thin wire. And then I secure the wire in place with a little bit of hot glue, and I again use my little silicone finger covers to help protect my fingers. Now to secure all these layers together, I'm using barge contact cement, and this stuff is extremely toxic, so I recommend that you do this outside or in a very well ventilated area and wearing masks. I am not wearing gloves, but I know from personal experience that I have no reactions to this, but use your best judgment. I'm applying thin layers to both pieces that I plan to join, and I'm using a piece of foam to spread this out. And once the glue is no longer shiny, you can attach the 2 pieces together. Now to shape the tail. I'm wearing a mask and goggles, and I'm using my Dremel flux shaft to do this. Make sure you have your hair pulled back and you're not wearing any loose clothing that could get caught in your Dremel. Be aware this is extremely messy. You'll see in the end. Now we're going to fix that tail body transition, and I'm just going to use a little bit of epoxy sculpt for this. You just mix it up in equal parts, and then I just apply it into the areas and smooth it out with the help of some water. And I had a little bit of epoxy sculpt left over, so rather than it go to waste, I decided to make a top out of it, and I have this leaf mold that I sprayed a little bit of nonstick spray to, and then just popped that right into the mold. I cut away the excess and did a little bit of sculpting cleanup to it, and then I draped it over the body to harden. And once again, more sanding. I know I did so much sanding on this doll. It just never ended. But I wanted that transition for the tail to the body to be nice and smooth. She still needs her flippers, so using some reference, I've cut out 2 flipper pieces out of 2mm craft foam. And the first thing I do is I am adding the wire to the toe area, I guess you would call it, and top area that would secure it to the tail. I really wanted to add these wires into the flippers at the bottom because I wanted the flippers to be able to curl independently. Now to add the details to the flippers, I didn't want to have to Dremel all this out like I did with the base of the tail. So I'm using a little bit of C4 foam clay from TNT Cosplay Supply to sculpt out all those details. This stuff is a little bit difficult to work with until you get the hang of it. At certain points it almost feels like sculpting with chewing gum. Using a little bit of water on your fingers will help with the stickiness though. So what I do is I sculpt the front of the flippers, and then once that's dry, I sculpt the back of them. I've after about 24 hours, these were already fully dried, so they were ready to be popped right in. So the first thing I do is trim up the wire pieces and then slide them into the base of the tail and secure them with a little bit of glue. Then with a little bit more clay, I start fixing the transition from the tail to the flippers. Now, foam clay is notoriously more brittle than regular foam is, so to counteract this, I'm going to be applying 2 layers of Flex Bond to the piece. This will help it retain its flexibility and not allow the foam to break. As you can see, I've already done base coats of paint onto the tail, and from here I plan on blushing the body and then using my pastels to help blend out that transition of paint to body. So since she is part seal, I decided I wanted her to be fuzzy, so I decided to give her a flocking coating on the tail. I basically blocked her tail out into color sections and would flock it one section at a time. And with that, she's done. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and if you'll stay tuned for the end for some final reveal photos. Remember, always be creating!